All right. I'd like to call the meeting of the Oconee County Planning Commission to order. Today is Monday, May 6th, and we appreciate everybody for coming. I'd like to start with the invocation. Lead us off on that.
Could we have a moment of silence, please? Thank you. Thank you, Holy Father, for the beauty of Oconee County and for the many activities we enjoy in the upstate of South Carolina. May we work to preserve and protect this land for generations to come. We ask that your Spirit be among us and help us to work with cooperation and respect for differing opinions. We ask your guidance as we plan for the future of the county in a positive and constructive manner. Please bless all those who work for the betterment of the county and keep them in your peace, prosperity, and good health. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone's had an opportunity to look over the minutes from last meeting. I hear an approval of those.
That's a vote.
I hear a second. Are there any changes or corrections that need to be made? Then, if all those are in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Unanimous.
All right. I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance tonight. These meetings can often be filled with tedious subject matter, so your interest and attendance is very much appreciated. We have public comments for non-agenda items tonight, and we've got one person signed up, Karen, and the last name, Iacovelli?
You got it.
All right. If you'd come up.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
We have a 4-minute time limit. I'll give you this notice when there's a minute remaining
Right.
and that notice when we're done.
Just a little bit about me so you know where I'm coming from, because I want to talk about planning.
And
Not just for-
if you would also state your name for the record.
That's
so
what we're
it's
going
in
to do.
the-
Karen Iacovelli, Iacovelli. I live at 14 Lookout Lane in Kiwi. So my bio, my husband and I own a real estate investment company, and I'm the founding director of the Philadelphia Trust Company in Philadelphia, with branches all over Pennsylvania, all over the country, parts of the country. And my background is I have an MBA in finance, and I guess the correct name is that I'm a legal scholar. I do not practice law. I pontificate about it. I'm not going to do that here tonight. And but for your interest, so I hope that we have a mutual background here, which obviously we might, is that I have sat on numerous planning commissions in several states, but New York State was the biggest. And the Westchester County Planning Commission that did the original Vision 2020 was several years' worth of work, hard work, like you do. It was intense, often bitter. 2,000 people in an auditorium screaming and yelling at one another. And that, but what we were able to do was the extraordinary. It was the first time in the country that multiple towns agreed on what to do and what not to do. And a master plan was developed especially for transportation. A large corporation had settled in Somers, New York, off of the main artery 684, and that actually fed into Route 7, which was a 2-lane old, 100-year-old road. The infrastructure was being severely impacted by one corporation. And what that led to was this enormous cooperation of what not to do, and not to turn 684 into egress here, ingress there, egress here, ingress there, so you'd have a steady flow of traffic. Well, it was, these are things that I have never forgotten, about a sense of place, and again, what to do and what not to do. One of the things I want to let you know is planning and development is near and dear to me. I'm a conservative, but I love the environment. I love the natural order of things. I don't like seeing it disrupted. I don't like seeing our country disrupted. And so because I'm a banker of a rather successful banking entity and a lender of a successful real estate lending company, I want to give you an idea of what's ahead of us immediately. Hundreds of community bank failures we're facing. We're facing very, very strong headwinds in this economy, in this country. This is real. One big bank is in trouble. It will not be bailed out. Whether it's going to fail this year or next year, it's just only a matter of what the feds want to do to keep our economic system afloat. Our dollar is being devalued. It's currency warfare that is real, that is not going away. We have a liquidity problem in this country. We have a debt problem. And debt relates to planning for Oconee County. The more infrastructure, the more we build here without a master plan, the bill gets paid by the people who are going to be slammed with debt. And so I wanted to just come here tonight to ask you to be careful in what you consider, what you plan, because the infrastructure is going to be on the backs of the people who are already maxed out. We can't afford not to do a master plan for Oconee County. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We have commissioner member comments. I'll start that off if I could. I was at the post office last week sending off a package, and I had to disclose if the package contained any hazardous materials, flammable, or if they contained a lithium battery. It was noteworthy that the U.S. Postal Service was concerned about the lithium batteries exploding or catching fire. So I thought that was, is apropos the right word, but I wanted to thank Ms. Spicer for originally bringing that to light. I wanted to thank the Planning Commission for their hard work, and I wanted to thank County Council and announce the passing of Oconee County's new junkyard ordinance. In addition to simple beautification, this ordinance with the specific language regarding the handling of electric vehicles is a great step in helping our fire departments, our first responders, helping keep our well water clean for Oconee County citizens and the environment from the hazards that exist from compromised lithium-ion batteries. So again, thanks to everyone for their hard work on that. Are there other commissioner comments?
I'll just mention something that Mike mentioned to me before the meeting, and that is in June, Phil Super will be coming back to give a presentation on the scenic highway proposal for sections of Highway 130.
Okay. Are there any other comments?
I'm sitting thinking on the lady's comments, and so if we are facing a future housing and banking crisis, what does that mean for the subdividers and developers that are coming here trying to, put in subdivisions and large developments? To me, it means they get the first part of the headwind. So I know there's a lot of alarmism right now about subdivisions, developments, large developments, people migrating into the county by the mass, but that statement does make me wonder about exactly what kind of headwinds they're facing first, and is there really a crisis in that respect? I don't know if y'all have any thoughts on that.
I think both of those are interesting observations. Are there any other comments from the commissioners? All right, let's go to staff comment.
Yep, follow up on Mr. Garland's comment, that Keep a Coney Beautiful presentation, June 17th, that's the second June meeting, so you guys have a date. And then also to let you know, and remind you, I'll be out of the office all week next week, so if you need anything, email, and we'll get with you as soon as we can. That's all I got for you tonight.
All right. Okay. At the last meeting, Planning Commission meeting, asked staff and our county attorney to draft a change to the density standards within our control-free zone. With the high-density footprint we've seen from some of the neighborhoods popping up in other counties, I think this proposed change would have a positive effect on the county's growth. I also believe it'll help provide some level of protections and red flags for someone subdividing their property, whether that's for family or to sell. So it's my belief we've structured a proposal that has no impact on landowners that are currently enjoying the personal freedoms of which control-free zone offers, while offering the entire county future neighborhood density protections found in our other residential zones. Mr. Root has reworked the ordinance around that request. At this time, I'd like to open the floor for public comments regarding this issue, and we'll dive into it. First one up is Mr. Tom Markovich.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Tom Markovich, just in case anyone was wondering. I really appreciate this time. I'm pretty sure all of you got a chance to read the letter that I sent to the commission and the chairman, and also the sketch that I did that outlines how much space it really takes to put a septic tank in a residential structure. And this is probably all of my comments are based on the fact that I truly am concerned about affordable housing in this county. And it just seems like we constantly are doing things to try and, I understand trying to control growth. At the same time, when we start limiting lot sizes, we're knocking out whole sectors of people who are young and working and trying to make a way for themselves, and that's an issue. It's a big issue. And small lot sizes aren't always the answer, but sometimes it is an answer. And I'm very concerned about that. But I wanted to put an end to this idea that it takes a half an acre of lot in order to put a house on a septic tank. That's a ridiculous notion. It's always been ridiculous. This regulation has been in place ever since DHEC took over septic tanks, which was right after home rule. And so prior to home rule, every county had a health department. The health departments were the ones that came up with the 0.57 acres. It had nothing to do with science. It was just a number. And so, but for the last 40-something years, DHEC has had control of septic tanks and on-site water systems for residential structures in this state. And it is only their authority. No county has that authority at all. And so, and in fact, there's a part of the Constitution of South Carolina that came into play after Home Rule that talks about local governments. It says general law cannot be set aside. The structure and administration of any government service or function, responsibility for which rests with the state government or which requires statewide uniformity. That's DHEC. And they have a number of different things that they're responsible for. But on-site wastewater systems is one. And they're the only ones who can tell people yes or no on septic. And the idea that we want to set this irrational idea of a half an acre to put an on-site wastewater system, there's no science behind that. And I just wanted every one of these, you should have gotten a sketch of these different systems that I drew out. All of these fit within the setbacks for Oconee County. These are just arbitrary square footage for houses, but each one of these septic systems is set and designed according to the state reg, period. There's no, and it's based on, the other thing is, the big thing that influences septic tanks is soil. So I went back and went through some of my prior septic tank permits, and looked at exactly how they were rating the soil. And this particular number kept coming up on almost all of my septic tank permits. And so I used that number to come up with these. I'm not saying there couldn't be a particular piece of soil somewhere, but I will tell you this. I've never had a septic tank permit turned down in Oconee County, and I've put a lot of septic tanks in. And for that matter, Pickens County and Anderson County. But I just have grave reservations about this whole idea of limiting the size of lots based on the fallacy that you have to have a half an acre for a septic tank. I think that's just just doesn't jive. Anyway, I don't want to get into the whole legal thing, but I do think that if it came down to it and there were a challenge, you're going to hear that there are other counties that have minimum sizes. Yeah, it's just never been challenged. It doesn't mean it's legal. It just means it's never been challenged, and that's all. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Gary Owens.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Good to see you again. My name is Gary Owens, and I live in Salem. I'm very pleased to see the proactive drafting of Ordinance 2024-18, outlining new parameters for density and homes per acre for the control-free districts in Oconee County. This ordinance, as I read, does not block any new development in Oconee County. However, it does outline needed and appropriate parameters for large new developments in the county. In reviewing Section 11, land use element of the Oconee County Comprehensive Plan, which was done in 2020, as you know, I believe this ordinance is very consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. I would recommend and ask that you please pass along your strong recommendation tonight to the Oconee County Council so that they may perform the first reading of Ordinance 2024-18 at their meeting tomorrow night, May 7th, here at this site. Again, thank you for your good work, and thank you all for serving the residents of Oconee County. That's it.
Linda Lovely.
My name is Linda Lovely, and I'm speaking in support of the proposed density changes for the control-free district. While not a panacea, it certainly is a step in the right direction. However, I'd also like to comment on Mr. Markovich's objections. First, I'd like to point out that Oconee County has had the same utility-related density restrictions on properties zoned residential and lake residential since 2008, and Mr. Markovich has never complained. In both of these existing zoning districts, the wording restricts lots to 1/4 acre with utilities available and 1/2 acre with utilities not available. Oconee County is not usurping DHEC's role. DHEC will still approve any wastewater system it sees fit on any property. The county has not been involved in the past, nor will it be in the future, in approving what wastewater system an individual uses. However, Oconee County has every right to determine density standards and to use the availability of utilities and wastewater systems on undeveloped property as a criteria. Septic or wastewater systems, no matter what kind they are, can and do fail. We see this now with Lake Keowee Water Source Protection Team providing funds for the many failed septic systems in the county. Larger numbers of individual systems that are not maintained or monitored by the Oconee Joint Sewer Commission translate into more potential failures with a negative impact on the county. Thus, it is in the county's best interest to limit the number of individual wastewater systems to no more than 2 per acre, regardless of technology. While Mr. Markovich always cites affordable housing to argue against any new development standard proposal, Oconee County's shortage of workforce housing is totally unrelated to our current or future development standards. Rather, it's simple economics. Builders focus on higher-end housing to maximize their profits. Planned development districts provide viable higher-density options to builders who want to provide lower-cost housing with smaller lots. Another solution I'm sure Mr. Markovich would fight would be to require...
Let me stop you real quick. I apologize. I'll stop your time. While we are very ample targets, I'm going to ask that you not comment by name on anyone out in the audience.
Okay.
So.
Anyway, another solution that would work would be to require large developments to include a certain percentage of affordable housing. That's always an option. Thank you.
I do want to state again that we are all ample targets up here, and that's the position we're in, but I'd ask that nobody comment about anyone else's by name. You can comment about their position or whatever, but not by name. All right, next up is Watson Johnson.
Late one to sleep sitting there. My name is Watson Johnson. We're not related, and I live in Salem. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I want to thank you for taking up this issue to address the growth and deal with it before it occurs rather than after the fact. And I do support this ordinance going to the county council. What I want to speak about or ask are several questions. And I don't know whether these things are in there and that I missed them. But in this, are there green space requirements in developments? And are there things to preserve trophy trees? And if not, I do believe that's something that needs to be considered. The second one is, will there be clear cutting restrictions? And we ran into this in Lexington County where they did change that because a developer's coming in and taking 100 acres at a time, clear cutting everything and the runoff that occurred. And then it's sitting there, and Mr. Nix, you would ask what happens if a development or there's a problem. They had one around the corner from us that sat from 2008 until about 2016, where it was cleared and nothing happened after the financial crisis. And then Mungo came in and started building lots and lots of homes. The third thing for my clarification is, are the density and lot size requirements net or gross of the total amount of acreage? 1/4 acre, 4 homes per acre, or 1/2 acre. Now, what I mean by that is If it's 100 acres and it takes 25 acres for the infrastructure, are we then looking at 300 homes max since there's 75 acres left to build on? Or are we looking at 400 homes because of the total gross acreage of 100 acres? And there was something else that we ran into in Lexington County where we thought we had 4 homes per acre, and it turned out it was per gross acre, so the builders were trying to stuff more homes into that smaller amount of space. Something I also would ask of you in the future as we work more on this is to look at the length of driveways. Because with people having SUVs and large trucks, and I addressed this, I believe, in an email to you, sir, after the last time I spoke, was that we've run into situations where with trucks and SUVs, they can't park in the driveways, they park on the streets, and then emergency vehicles and school buses are not able to get through. So I appreciate your working on this and addressing these things. I've seen in another county in the state what happens when this is not done. And so I applaud you for doing this and addressing this up front. Thank you very much.
You. Lynn Martin.
Lynn Martin from Tomasi, and I really think you're starting to address concerns that people along the county are bringing to you. I just don't know if it's enough, and I don't know if it's quick enough. That's my main concern, especially the zone free. It's just ample hunting ground for developers. And I wonder if there's enough representation on the board for people like me, people with concerns about the changes in our community, the changes in our natural resources. I mean, I don't know what each of you represent and where your passion is geared, but mine is not toward money. I think all we need is enough to survive. We don't need a lot more than what we need. It's like the First Lady who spoke. She said that there are true concerns about what the debt this country is in, and we need to look at that. We need to look at the debt. You know, affordable housing is thrown out here all the time as the dangling answer, when true affordable housing, you almost have to build it yourself. And with materials, affordable materials, I don't see how anyone today can afford a developing house. And I don't see how it's anything they would even want. It's just an upscale, I don't want to be derogatory, but some of them are not very pleasing, even in the name of development. But I think we're starting to make some headway. I think we are raising awareness, and I just don't know if it's enough, and I don't know if it's quick enough, and I would like to see us have a moratorium on developments. I think a developer should be treated differently than a homeowner who's wanting to build a home for his child on the family property, than and maybe they have rugged land and it needs to be in a particular place, than a developer who wants to come in and scrape our land and put multiple housing too close together. 4 houses on an acre, that's ridiculous. I know that's what's proposed here, but it's absolutely ridiculous. I would just like to see more representation on the board from people like me, and I thank you very much.
Martha Steele.
Good evening, Planning Commission members. I'm Martha Steele, and my husband John and I live in District 3. We have enjoyed living here for 23 years. We moved to Oconee County for the quality of life offered in this area because of its beauty, its favorable weather, its forests, its mountains, its waterfalls, its churches, its golfing opportunities, and its continuing educational and cultural opportunities. We have made our lives a part of many organizations in the county. For instance, using my 28 years of teaching experience, I have volunteered in the reading programs in the county elementary schools. I have volunteered more than 10 years with Our Daily Bread, have gone into every single grade school in the county for more than 10 years with Keep Oconee Beautiful Association Education Program, and I've volunteered with my church and in other community activities. My husband John has also volunteered in building entrance ramps into homes and making minor home repairs, and he's also served for more than 10 years on the Our Daily Bread. Over the years, we have seen this treasured way of life to be jeopardized with the minimally controlled and minimally managed development already having taken place and the proposed and possible unmanaged development for the future. My husband and I are now encouraged by the Planning Commission, which is now recommending updating some of the development standards in Ordinance 2024-18 amendment. We definitely support the Commissioner's recommendation of the new minimum lot size and maximum density standards proposed for control-free districts. I am also part of the Lake Keowee Source Water Protection Team. In the last grant that we were able to get through DHEC and other sources, we have helped pay for the repairs for 97 septic system failures. They happen. We sincerely, my husband and I, thank you, the Planning Commission, for your work on these new and very important development standards. We encourage the Planning Commission to vote to recommend sending the ordinance amendment to the County Council, and we encourage the County Council to adopt these new standards. Again, thank you for letting me speak for my husband and myself tonight. Thank you.
Dave Emanuel.
Hi, Dave Emanuel, District 1, just outside of Seneca. Want to compliment the commission. Been to previous meetings, watched you conduct your surveys and speak to people, and want to commend you on putting together what I think is an excellent ordinance. I had a lot more to say, but they've already said it. Regarding affordable housing, it's a myth. It's affordable one time, because after the first family moves in, when they move out, the price escalates dramatically. There's a housing shortage. Housings are expensive. It's expensive to build. And I think that is well beyond the control of the Planning Commission. Builders are going to build what they want to build. And I think 4 per acre or 2 per acre, as you've outlined, is just an excellent way to keep the density intelligent. And I'm sure there's variances that they can get if they have a valid reason to build something different, or if they want to do clusters in one part. But again, the overall approach you've taken is excellent, and keep up the good work.
All right, that ends the public comment for this section. So let's dive into it here. We had put this proposal together. Just to recap, this does not affect an individual building ancillary structures, as I called it, where someone may want to do a garage apartment, and the topography of their hillside would kind of prevent them going up and over the hill to tap into their existing septic so they could get another septic system. It keeps them from having to get a whole separate half acre for something like that for ancillary structures. It's also not stopping putting a home on a property that is less than a half an acre, as long as you're not building a development of over 10 homes. So we're not preventing someone from a septic standpoint. from doing something like that. We're not preventing somebody from subdividing their land in a way that they best see fit. We are, however, trying to slow some of the high-density, higher impact, larger subdivision type structures. Again, this is in control-free and based on our matrix. We are not trying to prevent anyone from being able to enjoy the freedoms that they're able to enjoy within control-free districts. So we're not trying to make those changes. We are and have lot size minimums, in some of our other zones. And with those, they had always been said with utilities or without utilities. I've asked Mr. Root to, because utilities kind of came down to, was it septic or was it sewer? Rather than is it electric and is it water? With the exception that there is a water and well issue that individuals will have to deal with, but larger subdivisions typically aren't dealing with a well issue. So I think that what we've proposed here and what Mr. Root here has put together is something that affords everybody something while at the same time putting the brakes, cooling off a little bit the high intensity opportunities we've seen in some of the other counties. So I'd like to open it up for additional discussion here. Yes, sir.
Where does it talk about, or define a subdivision as 10 homes or greater, or development as 10 homes or greater?
Did we leave that out?
It's on chapter 26,
G, it's item G below.
I'm in 32, so.
It's just proposed.
Minimum lot size, maximum development totaling 10 or less parcels.
Where, let's see, 36, is that in 36 or 38? Where is that?
Page 9 of your backup, letter G. It's gonna be after the matrix.
Okay. Oh.
There's a second page.
I guess my concern is, looking at chapter 32, section 212, we don't have any limitation on development or subdivision definitions that talk about, let me find it. I just want to make sure that chapter 32 is not in conflict with, and I know Mr. Root looked at this really hard, so. Find it again. Subdivision means all divisions of a tract or parcel of land into 2 or more lots, building sites, or other divisions for the purpose of sale, lease, or building development, including all division of land involving a new roadway or an alteration on an existing roadway. That doesn't talk about a limitation, I don't think, of 10.
Does it, it seems to define the word subdivision though, as it would apply in that sentence. Does it or does it not? Is that the question?
My concern is the definition of subdivision in chapter 32, which is what we say we're applying this to, does not contain a 10 unit criteria or exception.
What's your take on that, Mr. Root?
I think I understand it two ways, so Mr. Nix, just jump in and tell me if it's a matter of the definition in the code versus what's in the draft ordinance, they wouldn't have to reconcile, but they're speaking of two different things. So the definition in the code, the subdivision definition, what's excluded is I think that's probably in 45 of the 46 counties and then state law. But the 10 unit requirement is not going to be in what's codified online, just because I was told during last meeting to draft it. So this is the first time it's popped up.
My concern is that right now, there is no 10, as far as I can tell, there is no 10-unit exception. This could be Grandpa Joe with his 1 acre, and he wants to divide it amongst his 5 grandkids and put 5 trailers on it. He ought to be able to do that. What keeps him from doing that?
I don't think anything keeps him from doing that based on this.
That's my understanding of it too. I don't think that he would be kept from.
And this is a sewer. This is one that's within 300 feet of sewer, by the way. This is the 4 per acre limitation I'm talking about. Does anything keep Grandpa Joe from putting 5 trailers on it? Does anything keep, if he has 6 grandkids, does anything keep him from putting 3 duplexes on it?
It wasn't supposed to, so I'm rereading and,
Wasn't supposed to allow?
so no, it was not supposed to prevent. Where an individual can subdivision, many people are confused, a subdivision is moving a line or adding a line 1 foot over from the existing line is a subdivision of land. And so in our definition of subdivision, kind of defines that, it's any subdivision of land. And so this was anyone who's subdividing to separate off 10 or less parcels should not be restricted by this 1/2 acre minimum. It's for 11 or more parcels would be held to this 1/2 acre or 1/4 acre standard. Is that,
That's
Help
what I
me out.
understood
Where
my
is-
assignment to be, and I wrote, the minimum lot size and maximum lot density provisions do not apply to parcels created by subdivision developments totaling 10 or less new parcels.
does not apply
Where
to?
is that?
That would be under G. It's showing on my document as Exhibit A,
Okay.
page 2 of 2. At the top, there's a number 9.
Is this in chapter 38 or 26?
It's in the proposed works of Mr. Root.
Do we have that in our handout?
Yes, it's gonna be page 9 of your handout.
Okay, I see it now. Finally found it.
And it's on the screen.
Item G.
Okay, this is in chapter 38, yeah, all right. In the notes below the zoning.
Yes.
Not applied.
So these would be specifically applicable to this matrix zone. Is that the correct assessment?
That's the way I wrote it. That's the way I understood
Okay.
you want to mean it. I think it's going to be difficult perhaps as you go down the road in implementation, but I'm writing it that way now. I just think, I put in the language, larger subdivision project may not be broken into smaller subdivision projects for the purposes of circumventing the provisions of this section. I know from past experience on similar ordinances here in other jurisdictions, that can be difficult to track. Mr. Coley could probably speak to that better, but if somebody, I guess, has a 20-acre or parcel, is going to divide it up into, say, 40 units and decides to, all right, this is my subdivision, but I'm just going to do this one little one here, it's not going to incorporate the whole subdivision, if that makes sense. He may try to do 9 units and then 9 units and then 9 units and 9 units, and I'm not saying anyone's doing that. I'm just saying that can be difficult to track. Maybe you have something new. It was several years ago difficult to track. I can't remember what district it was in, but.
And it should actually be 10 units as opposed to 9 units, but let me ask James real quick. There's something within our ordinances that talked about if somebody is doing a larger development, something over 10 lots, that stops the piecemeal process to some degree. Is that a correct assessment?
It is supposed to. So we have major and minor for subdivisions. And you're not supposed to get around the major considerations or the major responsibilities by doing multiple minors. It has happened. Some that have gone through.
Is it, I've never seen the development that that everyone seems to be talking about across the board within the county that we're seeing over in Pickens County is where we're seeing development happen in mass number. I've never seen that type piecemealed before. I have seen, somebody said Farmer Joe that wants to subdivide. I have seen him do, he's got 11 children. He is going to have to do it in a piecemeal fashion.
A lot of times, if it's a major developer, they know they're going to do a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. They'll have it listed that way, and they'll break it out in phase lines. Typically, you want to do all your engineering up front, and not go back and forth and back and forth. And go ahead and permit it, but only build phase 1 out or phase 2 out, and then when those lots are sold, sell phase 3 or open phase 4.
So that does bring up the engineering and the dollars involved. I mean, I know there's huge expense in coming up with those things. I can't imagine a developer building 50 homes or 40 homes or 30 homes is going to go through the engineering expense one at a time.
We're getting better at noticing if somebody's doing 9 and there's a whole bunch of to be whatever later, and asking those questions ahead of time too.
I do have another follow-up question to that, though, is you said you didn't know if this implementation could actually hold. You said you weren't sure as far as the wording, that you worded it based on what we wanted down, but weren't sure that this was something that could be managed. Was it because you weren't sure if the planning department could manage it from a piecemeal standpoint?
For that particular issue, logistically, it's been a problem in the past. That's the only issue I was bringing up. There are other issues with the ordinance, but whenever's the time for me to get into that.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we accept and approve the 2024-18 proposed draft ordinance and provide it to the county council for their meeting on April the 7th, 2024, for their review and possible first reading. Is there a second?
I'll second that, to modify April to May.
Oh, excuse me, May, thank you.
So
May 7th, 2024.
let's continue our discussion on it then.
I'd just like to add that we're supposed to be looking at ordinances and land use that coincides with our comp plan, and it seems that this does in Chapter 11-111, where it says review and update existing land use regulations as needed to facilitate development. So that's good. That gives it a lot more credence too when we're in line with our comp plan.
Mr. Root, in my reading this, it seems as though this is written in a way that we had sent it to you of content that we wanted in there. Again, protections of individuals utilizing the enjoyment of control-free, of small development, sectioning it off, whether it be for family or just a local builder who wants to build several homes. You just mentioned that there were other elements of this that you had concern with.
I did. I took my assignment to draft the ordinance as you dictated it in the motion. I didn't put my own flair or anything into it because I understood it to be a point for conversation.
So what are we going to run into?
First, let me talk about the ordinance body, the enabling ordinance. This would be the ordinance that adopts the matrix. Pending ordinance doctrine, I think this is what was brought up prior to the meeting and asked me. This is item number 6. This is common for a lot of zoning actions that have what is called the pending ordinance doctrine, meaning after first reading, it essentially becomes effective if it's later enacted, but there has to be also advertisement to the public that we're doing this. This is put in the zoning ordinances to kind of secure the pending ordinance doctrine, but I would not, with something this vast, and I guess the notion is to turn it to council tomorrow, I would not recommend to council that they try to implement the pending ordinance doctrine on one day with no public notice. So that's one thing. That's just giving you a heads up. I agree with Ms. Lovely, I think, that made the comment that the county can take actions under its police power and avoid a takings claim if it does something that's gonna touch on the general health, welfare, and safety of the citizens, and septic could be that issue. County's not gonna be permitting septics, inspecting septics, anything of that issue. But if you have a viable reason to say it has to be 5 acres because of septic issues, because of discharge, whatever, that could go to that general public health, safety, and welfare, the police powers. Markovich brings up the interesting point, and good point, that times have changed. There are engineered septic systems, and there are a lot that do not require the half acre. And as I recall, I think it was back in 2017 when that was removed, that was the reason why. That was because DHEC didn't request a requirement, anything from the counties in. They would handle it and apply it. So that's just an issue that I'm bringing up. I think that for me, and y'all do speak to an aspect of the comp plan that gives some foundation to this, but I guess in going, it has to correspond and be jive, for lack of a better term, with the comp plan. In section 3.2.2, it delineates a number of items that would seem to, and again, I'm putting this out there, I'm not being a judge of this, so y'all make the policy, you vote to send it on the council, but these items would seem to go against limiting lot sizes across the whole county, which is what this does. Folks could see this as taking away the notion of, which is the goals, objectives, and strategies in the comp plan, of allowing for affordable housing, workforce housing, which was a goal in the comp plan, which generally, typically, requires higher density, infrastructure in place, and it's cheaper to do. I'm not disagreeing that it doesn't change that way after the first seller. I'm not disagreeing that it may be completely inaffordable when it happens, but there's case law to the effect that you do not want to do exclusionary zoning, meaning you're zoning in such a way that you exclude people who could otherwise property. If it was in a particular district, just one district, 2 districts, whatever, and there's other outlets, then not a problem. But I can see that being a problem if litigation arises. We can talk about the why. I think we've talked about this previously a number of times, always having your why in place, and then how. We can talk about that maybe at the end. For regulatory takings, meaning if the county veers outside of the general welfare, public health, safety, police powers, and it falls into a takings, there are a number of different ways it could trigger that. I don't think, as it's written now, as it may evolve, that necessarily will fall as a regulatory takings under the test that we do have now, but it's something to be mindful of. It's an objective test. It goes to economic-based, or what's the economic impact on the particular party, what were the investment-based expectations, and essentially what's the county goal? What are they up to? What's the county's goal in doing this? If they find it completely lopsided, the county's goal is just we want our population at 100,000, we're not gonna, increase it anymore, that could be a problem.
You brought up three things I'd like to follow up with and ask about. One, you talked about the affordable housing aspect of it, and looking at the HUD homes or Habitat for Humanity homes that are over in the West Union area. In looking at those were all, the ones that have been done and the ones that are being done were roughly 0.2 of an acre to 2.4 of an acre, somewhere in there. And we are considering that as being affordable housing at its optimal. When you mentioned that we may be stepping on the toes of an affordable housing suit type situation, I would say 1/4 of an acre with the sewer standpoint, we would still be well within a norm. Am I wrong on that?
Neither you nor I are going to be the final arbiter of that. It'll be a judge. But I do believe that is kind of in the eye of the beholder, but all I can tell you is the law, y'all make the policy decisions and run with it or not. The law is out there is that if you make these large-scale minimum lot requirements, it can be considered exclusionary zoning. I'm not saying this is exactly, absolutely prohibited, I'm giving you the yellow flags, not the red flags. Does that make sense? Is that a better way to put it? Because I'm not drafting this saying, hey, this is the way y'all should pass it. I will tell you what the warnings are, I will tell you, hey, that's an absolute red flag. That's my job is not to get the policy.
Second question to James is, I was looking through the county the other day and trying to find subdivisions that were larger scale subdivisions that had lots less than a half an acre. Foxwood Hills was one of them. There were a couple of subdivisions that were out there, but it seemed like owners were having to own a couple of lots to be able to get everything in there that they needed. Is there, as far as their house and their septic and things like that, or they were coming in on private sewer, like with Foxwood Hills? I didn't see subdivisions that were being built where they really were being built on less than a half an acre. Are there, to your knowledge, just in generally speaking, I mean, how many toes are we stepping on with regard to this?
There are not a lot that are not on sewer. You know, we have a lot of very small lot subdivisions that have come online in the last 2 years that are the 6,000 square feet, 8,000 square feet lots. Those are all on sewer. We're not seeing a lot of real small lots on septic.
Okay. The last question I had is, to me, the most important question. It goes back to the item number 6. Was I understanding, and it went over my head, was I understanding that if we send this to council for them to talk about tomorrow, that this could be, that alone could be an objection that could be brought up because it was not the public was not notified with enough advance notice?
I'm sorry, I framed that incorrectly. No, not as a general rule, not for the ordinance in full. What I meant is because there's a pending ordinance doctrine that can be applied, we have it in the majority of the zoning ordinances because it happens out there and you can apply it. I'm not saying that does not make this ordinance unlawful. I would just advise council not to try to implement it tomorrow night, meaning this ordinance is effective starting at 7:30 tomorrow evening because of the pending ordinance doctrine, because of the lack of notice to the public.
And when you say effective, are you meaning they shouldn't approve the first reading?
No, I'm sorry. So once the general public, how the pending ordinance doctrine usually plays out in cases like this, land use cases, there's an ordinance. Council has first, second, whatever reading on it. Council has advertised its intention to the public. Hey, this is what we're doing. We're going to have public hearings on this. Stamp. At that point in time, that ordinance can be used by the county, the municipality, whomever, because of this pending ordinance doctrine. That's what that speaks to. It's not a short circuit. It's just a way to kind of keep the status quo as an ordinance meanders through its process. I'm just saying, bringing that to your attention, that's in this draft ordinance. I would not recommend county council act on it. That's all. I'd recommend it take its normal course with absolutely adequate public hearing notice, bending over backwards public notice.
I know that county council had a holding spot for this in their agenda. At the same time, I don't want them not approving this simply because we were hasty in our desire to get something done.
I'm sorry, if I'm misspoken again, I'm not gonna tell them not to approve it. I'll say, approve it, do whatever they wanna do. I'm just gonna say, hey, the pending ordinance doctrine, you should veer away. Don't tell Mr. Coley to stop doing permits. That would be my part, because I think that would open up the county liability, which is 80% of my job to avoid. So that's all. I'm not saying don't pass the ordinance. You know, whatever they want to do with the ordinance, they can do with the ordinance. I'm just speaking to that particular clause to make it effective after one reading. Everybody knows an ordinance, or may know an ordinance takes 3 readings and a public hearing in most cases. So that was all. It wasn't a matter of rendering void the ordinance, just the application.
So you're saying that this item number 6 is something that you've put in there
that has carried in there for most zoning ordinances that are
Gotcha.
bringing to detention. And I don't have a problem with it remaining in there. I might tweak it a little bit, but I want to bring it to, I just want to tell you all that I'm going to tell council that they shouldn't try to do this after one reading with no other public comment, notice, advertising, whatever. Have your first reading, and of course, they don't have to listen to me.
Mr. Root, isn't that the purpose of having 3 readings, is that the public is notified through the process? So there's really no problem, is there?
No, it's that, if you don't invoke the pending ordinance doctrine, yeah, absolutely, the 3 readings, if that's, is that what, am I hearing your question correctly? Yeah. The 3 readings, public hearing, I mean, that's the process to get good public input. And as I understood the process when it lifted off, when Mr. Johnson introduced this last week, and watching the meeting, this was gonna be a conversation starter and getting the, folks involved, because this is, what percentage of the county is controlled for James?
80% if you take out the national forest.
Right, so 80% of the county is gonna affect a lot of folks. So I'm just, yes, do all the public notice advertisement that they can, that would be my, and will be if y'all send it to them, or if they take it up on their own, would be my advice to them, but that wouldn't be that, hey, hold off on first reading. Certainly have your first reading if you wanna pass it.
So, are you saying that item 6 is normal language?
Yes,
That it be passed after first reading?
they can be
That
effective
it be
after.
effective after first reading?
For zoning ordinances, to maintain the status quo. It is often, it is not a statutory law, it is developed out of the common law, case law, and it's in there, it's applicable.
When
Y'all can
does-
tell me to strike it from it, I'll still bring it to the council's attention, if they strike this and send it to the council without it.
When does council go to once-a-month meetings?
June, this year's, unless I missed it, because it's usually just July and August, but I looked at the calendar today, and I did not see but 1 meeting in June.
So they have 2 future meetings before there's a gap?
That is correct, and I don't want to say that this is definitely gonna happen, but it's most years it's happened that they have had an extra meeting around the budget. So I'm not saying, hey, there's gonna be another meeting, definitely, there's often a special call meeting, but otherwise, yes. The meeting tomorrow, May 17, June 18, then 1 in July, and 1 in August.
So it's my desire to get this in front of council. It's also my desire to have this seriously considered and implemented, because I don't feel like it is affecting, I feel like that the freedoms are still there, with the exception of building a subdivision over 10 homes. At the same time, I don't want it to die simply because we jumped the gun in a hurry of 2 weeks. So are you saying that if we implement this tomorrow and there's a fear factor, then they say we're not going to do anything with this? Is that still where does it go from there? Or should we let this go through the normal process of putting it up for the next meeting?
I don't think if y'all have, and I don't want to dominate the floor, so, I mean, y'all have a discussion to have on this, because there wasn't a whole lot last time, certainly, but I don't think if y'all finish and send it to council, I don't think that's a rush that's problematic, because you don't enact anything, council does. So they could take it up, they can have first reading and then do the work, and if you want to say strike paragraph 6 and send it to them for tomorrow, I'll strike it and send it that way. Just based on a motion. It still doesn't mean the pending ordinance doctrine doesn't exist, and I'll probably still tell them, hey, but it's not meant to scare anybody. I just want to make it clear for someone who takes this and says, hey, starting tomorrow, tonight, we can't do this, and that's.
So if they've had first reading on it, so when you say you're advising maybe don't take it up, are you saying don't keep it in the agenda? Or are you saying that they read it and it has now gone through first reading, but they're not voting on it? It's still going over my head.
Is anybody with me? Am I just making a muck of this?
I think I've got you.
All right, so the ordinance has, to be effective, to be enacted, it has 3 readings, right? Passes first reading, passes second reading, pass third reading. We do public hearings on all ordinances, generally on third reading. You don't have to do it on every ordinance, but we do. I think it's a great practice. So after those things happen, the ordinance passes, it's enacted, it's the law of the county. So that's the normal ordinance procedure. The pending ordinance doctrine, uniquely applicable to land use and zoning issues, says, hey, county, you've had first reading, now it's moving on to second reading. Well, you've had first reading, have you advertised to the public that you're intending to implement this land use restriction? If so, to keep the status quo, you've had first reading, you can tell planning department, nope, that doesn't fit the ordinance that we have pending right now. It's not pending until they have first vote.
It's a window.
Mr.
It's a
Chair.
window for them to basically start enforcing before the ordinance goes into effect.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm saying don't do that. I will tell council don't do that because of the advertising.
And then it's up to council
So
to
if
decide whether they want to do it or not.
saying
It's not
council
up to
not
us.
to do that, well, it don't need to be here.
Yeah, it's fine. Take it out. Tell me to take it out.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to amend my own proposal, my own motion to, right now it says proposed draft ordinance, but I'd like for it to say proposed draft ordinance except for the striking of item 6 is, hope everybody knows what item I'm talking about. Item 6, the one we've been discussing.
Yes, sir, that's the pending ordinance
Okay,
paragraph.
that, I'd like for my motion to include that amendment.
So it goes in front of council without 6 being implemented.
Correct.
We'll need a second.
Second.
It's open for discussion now.
Go ahead.
We don't need to take it out. Council can just say, we're not going to enact this right now. We're going to let this go through the process. That's all they have to do. We don't have to take anything out. We don't have to change anything. But it's up to council to decide how they want to handle it. And let's just let them handle it. They're going to have legal advice that tells them, we need to do this, this, and this, and they'll only say yea or nay.
Mr. Chair, I agree with Mr. Adams to an extent, but from what I'm gathering, there's no real purpose of it being in there. And when it comes to people reviewing this in the future, it's information they really don't need. So that's why I decided to try to amend my motion.
And you're thinking it could be a deterrent from, am I taking, is that?
I
the
don't
thing,
want
a
it
deterrent?
to die on the vine simply because of something being in there that feels too quick on the push.
I have to agree with that. It's almost like we're enacting this ordinance without hearing the people first.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I don't agree with that statement at all.
I mean, if we are on the first reading restricting them according to the ordinance that we're trying to propose, then I don't understand how you can disagree with that.
Okay, are you for my amendment or not?
I am for your amendment, taking it out.
Okay, well, I misunderstood, sorry.
Okay.
Is there any more discussion about this?
I'd like to present a point of order.
Okay.
I think we ought to vote on the amendment to remove item number 6 first, and then continue the discussion
Okay.
of
Right.
the ordinance itself.
Call to vote.
Are we ready to vote? So to remove item 6 from this, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Motion passes.
Okay, so we're moving the forcefulness of item 6. We'd still like it to get in front of council is the motion.
I understand that we do want to go in front of council, and I do think it's a good ordinance, but I feel that we should do our due diligence, and Mr. Markovich graph shows, I was under the impression that it took at least a half acre lot for a septic system. But from his draft here, it clearly shows that it can be less than that. And I would like to put this to rest and make a motion to task staff to go to DHEC and get their interpretation of this document and see if, in perfect conditions, if it is so.
You'll need a second.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Second. James, did you talk to Columbia today? Were you able to reach them?
We had a brief conversation to see if we could get somebody to come from DHEC this evening. They were not able to arrange that on short notice.
Okay. My personal thought on this is that, yes, you can absolutely build on less than a half an acre and have a septic installed on less than a half an acre. Yes, there have been in my real estate world failures of approvals of DHEC. I can mention several lots in neighborhoods that weren't approved because of soil conditions. I have personally dug holes on septics where this section of the lot was not suitable based on soil conditions, so they had to move to another section to do a better soil condition. I don't know that while the graphs are cool, I don't know that they're exemplary of our topography or of our soil conditions as a whole. I also personally think that the implementation of this doesn't affect the individual. Even an individual builder who's building up to 10 homes. I do think it affects that larger group. I do like the idea of getting this on a bigger stage so that the public, in addition to the group here, can really start saying yay or nay, or we like this or we don't like this, or here's our issues, and let it come back to us, is kind of my thought behind it.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I was trying to get your attention.
Yes, sir.
I'm not in favor of this, because I can see where this could end up taking weeks to get staff to look into it, get DHEC involved and all that. All that can be done from the council level. People can come in, bring any information they want, including us, to the council meeting if we have concerns. I just don't see there's any reason for a delay.
I'll have to disagree with that. We are a aid to council. And if we know there's an area that's lacking or we need additional interpretation in, if we know that, I think it is our responsibility to say, hey, let's dig into this and take that burden off council. We should not always push forward our ugly babies into somebody else's lap in hopes that they'll deal with them.
Go ahead, yes, sir.
The whole basis for the half acre, or the one home per half acre in non-sewer line, or non-infrastructure was the .573 acre discussion about sewer. If that's not true, then I think we've got more discussion to have before I'm on board with a half an acre.
And this deals with sewer, the discussion. I noticed the wording here, if septic tank is required. Or if sewer access. Well, a lot of subdivisions have large capacity septic systems. So how does this pertain to them? Which category are they going to fall in?
James, would this be private sewer, or would this be, can you answer that question?
If it's a larger common system, it's a septic system, my interpretation would be it would be a septic-sized lot. If it's on a private sewer, like a package plant, then it would be on private sewer, which would be different than septic, which would be how it's treated and then how it's discharged.
I see a issue there because both type systems actually are removing the waste from the lot and transferring it somewhere else to be treated, whether it's with chemicals or naturally. I just have a problem with that wording. It really should be on-site septic system or on-site waste treatment or off-site waste treatment, wastewater treatment, is I feel is how it should read. Because really are,
So you're suggesting the off-site would function under a different acreage number?
it would have to, because it'd have to accommodate the houses, the bedrooms, the amount of bedrooms in the houses, which give you the green space that we're asking for.
Yeah.
All right, Mickey, I got a question for you. So right now it says quarter acre with sewer access, half acre if septic tank required. You're saying there's something in between?
Yes,
That's
there
not
is
talked
something in
about
between. There's community septic system, there's large capacity septic systems. Both of those are off-site. So in other words, you could have a quarter acre lot with either one of those types of septic systems, and you would not have an issue because it's not treated on that lot.
Is the if septic tank required not, is there not an assumption that that is on-site or on that property, septic tank?
Well, that's what we're asking for.
But I guess the with sewer access or common septic tank, is that the way you want to word it or something like that?
Well, the problem is I think the sewer needs, because we're leaving it open for interpretation. And what was your interpretation on this?
My initial interpretation
Yes.
was a larger common system. They combined septic would make it a septic system based on right now.
He would apply the half acre limit.
Right, and that's the problem with leaving that with this wording that I see. Depending on who comes in the seat in the future, as James moves on up the ladder, may interpret it different. So if our true intent is to say, okay, a quarter acre lot for off-site wastewater treatment and a half acre lot for on-site wastewater treatment, then let's say that, so it can't be misinterpreted.
Are you hearing what is being asked? Because there are subdivisions out there that have a common-based septic system, and you clearly wouldn't need a half an acre for something like that, because you don't have the house sitting on there as well.
I think it's good. I think Mr. Haney's wording recommendation on-site wastewater, quarter acre, off-site, something along those lines is a good idea. Yeah.
Is that a change that can be easily made and approved, or is that something you need to do, revisit, and come back to us on?
Oh, no, it's not anything I need to revisit. I think it's just wording, how just like striking paragraph 6, this is the conversation I guess I envision. Do you want to change this wording from the motion to be more akin to what the public health concern is, that you have a parcel that has to accommodate a septic and all the stuff that goes with it? That's the issue. For the larger lot is understood the why. Talk about if that's not the case, if it's a collective septic system, then I guess that issue is not present. Then it would make sense to modify the wording. I don't see it as I don't see that as much of a hindrance as if the why is definite. You know, if septics require half acre for the public good and welfare. That's, I guess, if I were attacking it, I would look more there versus wastewater on-site, wastewater off-site.
And I don't think it's ultimately, at the end of the day, we're not talking about if it's a half acre for septic. We're talking about a half acre for septic for larger combined subdivisions. My point being is that if I have less than a half an acre and I have one lot, yes, I can design a septic system for that lot. And there is the repair opportunity for that lot. As I'm building a bigger subdivision, now if you've got common soil issues spread out over 20 or 30 or 40 lots, and if there's a compromised soil of one lot, okay, there's the repair is figured in by DHEC. But now if I've got 20 lots and I'm building on potentially lesser quality soil, now I've got 20 potentials as opposed to one potential. So my point is that under our current setup, we're not saying septic on a half acre. We're saying if it's under 10 homes or 10 homes or less, you can do whatever you want, as long as DHEC approves it. We're saying for something over 10 homes, then it would be a half an acre.
I don't think, unless I'm missing it, I don't think that negates Mr. Haney's point.
No, it doesn't at all negate that. I just don't want there to be, I don't want there to be a misconception that we're saying that this is saying one home per half acre, period. It's one home per half acre for subdivisions over 10 homes.
So we got a motion on the books
To have that wording changed.
well, actually, to research this first. I think that was the
I think
original.
that's the motion already.
Do you want to remove that motion and move to change the wording to on-site, off-site?
Yes, I would be willing to rescind that. And the new motion would be change the wording to on-site and off-site wastewater treatment.
Second.
Who seconded that?
David Nix.
Chair, I think we're ready to vote on that.
On the motion that was just presented, all those in favor, say aye. All those opposed?
Mr. Johnson?
Yes, sir.
I wanted to go back and address what I thought were good questions by Mr. Watson Johnson. He said, are there green space requirements, trophy tree requirements? The answer is no and no. Are there clear cutting limitations? The answer is no. As far as density, net or gross, so my understanding is if you have an acre, well, let's say you have 20 acres and you want to subdivide it into 80 homes. So if you need to use, if you can't use 20 of those acres, then my understanding is that would reduce the quarter acre per, that would reduce you below the quarter acre per lot, and that would be allowed, right? That's gross. Is that my understanding?
You can answer that, James, but as I understand it, you could put 8 to an acre as long as you gave up another acre somewhere else.
Correct. And that is your green space requirement.
Correct.
It's weaved into the gross, I guess, or net. Would it be net or gross? I forget. However you want to word it.
On net, that's it.
Net, yeah. So,
Which is what I was saying, right? If you took, under the sewer situation of one home per quarter acre, 4 homes per acre, you could put 8 homes on that acre as long as you sacrificed an acre on that property somewhere else.
If it was one contiguous parcel.
One contiguous parcel that was being subdivisioned.
so my example of 20 acres, you want to put 80 homes on it, which if you just spread them out, that's 4 per acre, right? So now you want to make 10 acres of green space. Well, that means you're going to have to pack those homes in half of that. So that's 8 homes per acre. We're okay with that, right?
I mean, it'd be non-inclusive of any new road that was put in, that'd be a platted road. So if they've got to build new roads, they're gonna lose a little bit of that density.
And so that brings up one other question with that or clarification.
Can I answer your question?
So someone couldn't say the right-of-ways are my green space.
Correct.
Is that a correct statement? So they would have to truly sacrifice.
Well, it wouldn't be green, we wouldn't be calling it green space.
Right, it's not technically green space, but it's unusable.
If there is a shared drain field, then that would be the area that's dedicated for the drain field and then for the repair area.
Well, and we were actually talking about talking about sewer in this case.
It would just be non-developed, it would be park, it could be whatever, but it would not be unusable, so you.
They could turn it into a park or whatever.
The park is not gonna be in the road.
And that was the way to get that built in.
Right. My personal opinion is it's gonna discourage anybody from making green space, and that's okay, but, that's just part of the process. I mean, would it not discourage somebody from making green space? Or I guess it wouldn't.
They're building,
Because
if
they're not
they're
worried about the
wanting
needs.
to front load somewhere on the property because the topography is better or something like that,
Right.
they're still, are they calling it green space? It's land that they cannot put a structure on. So is it green space? We haven't gone into that part of development standards to quote, start defining what green space looks like necessarily. But it would create that green space element. We're seeing if there's any more questions regarding sending this to council with the change in wording as far as on-site and with removing number 6 from what we send. Is that,
That's done. Yep.
are we ready to vote on that? Is there any more discussion on that?
I'm sorry, I missed it. Did Mr. Haney's motions both get resolved?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm ready to vote.
Is it, okay, we all understand what we're voting on. All right, all those in favor of that motion that I couldn't quote back at the
Do you
moment?
want me to read it again? You want me to resubmit the motion or make it
I
clear to the
think-
public? So
go
we know
ahead.
what we're- Okay, I move that we accept and approve the 2024-18 proposed draft ordinance with amendments, which includes, by the way, on-site, off-site, and removal of number 6. Okay, I'm not putting that in this motion, I just wanted for clarification, that with amendments means that. And provide it to the council county meeting on May the 7th, 2024 for their review and possible first reading.
All right, all those in favor, raise your hand by saying aye. All those opposed?
Motion passes.
All right, we are through that one. We have hopefully one in short order here. The next one is the front side setback. I put this on the agenda because I hoped that it would be something short we could get in and get handled. First, public comments. Linda Lovely.
I was puzzled, this is Linda Lovely, I was puzzled to see this on the agenda, looking at a change for front setbacks for odd-shaped lots. I try to keep up with the Board of Zoning Appeal variance requests, and I didn't recall any front setback issue posing a significant problem. To verify it, I called a couple of individuals who have served on the BZA and asked their opinion, and both saw no need for a change. Here's what Jim Codner, a former BZA chair, had to say. Quote, "I see the BZA as a service organization that seeks to mediate strict ordinance requirements versus peculiarities of a given lot. If a property owner has a reasonable story to tell, they will likely prevail. I can't remember a setback variance request being refused. BZA members are local property owners themselves and generally receptive to building lot issues. There may be a need to clarify wording on the issue between chapters 32 and 38, but I wouldn't change the basic front setback requirement." Now I'm ending that quote, and my worry is that any change of the front setback requirement will actually cause more rather than fewer problems. Lots can be configured in all manner of shapes, and while some, like wedge lots, have a fairly wide neck, what if the wedge actually looks like a pie, a slice of a pie, and is extremely narrow at the top? In this case, if you measure a front setback from the right-of-way, it could position the house far above its neighbors and potentially cause runoff, block views, or other problems. Yet in this scenario, the neighbors have no recourse, they have no voice. In contrast with the current setback requirements, reasonable requests have always been granted while neighboring properties are protected. That's the purpose of the BZA, and it's working exactly like it should. Thank you.
All right. So, one of the responsibilities of a planning commission is to recognize or identify repeated BZA hearing issues, like was mentioned. And in fact, on 3 occasions over the last 12 to 18 months, there have been just this issue. So, not sure about Jim Codner's comments, but you can go back through and see those, that it is something that has been brought up. Also, I get several phone calls about it, and I know that James has had calls about it as well. If you'll put up this sketch on the online, what we see, the current practice, and I'll use the residential zoning requirement because the definition and the way it works is per the zone area. But right now, if you've got a road surface, you've got a right-of-way, the front side setback is measured off of that front right-of-way. However, for lots under residential, the build area must be 80 feet wide in the build area of a lot. But we're interpreting, in my opinion, flag lots which say that the lot has to be at 80 feet wide before you start your setback. So in the case of this example, the front side setback is not up even with the rest of the homes, it's actually set back beyond that. One, actually affecting people's views, potentially, but more importantly, where it has come in front of the BZA is now it's pushing the home potentially because of our topography, either off of a hill or into a ravine or other situations. This is to me an easy fix where a consumer goes and he purchases a lot. He sees a for sale sign and purchases a lot. He sees all the houses on the street, thinks, oh, my house is going to fit perfect here, until he goes to build and finds out that he's being pushed 50 feet beyond where the rest of the houses are, simply because his lot didn't happen to be 80 feet wide at the road. So it's under the current restrictions, I don't see it as being a change, but because it does say all through our ordinances, both in 32 and 38, that it shall begin at the right-of-way, not that it shall begin at the point at which the lot reaches 80 feet wide. But there is a clarification issue and obviously confusion on this because there's been different interpretations. I have never been a fan of making people go in front of a BZA because you've got 7 members that you're subject to being able to do on your property based on those 7 members rather than the ordinance that is put in place. The ordinance is an opportunity for a consumer to see what the rule says before they get into purchasing a property. And in my opinion, the rule says that the lot shall begin, that the setback shall begin at the right-of-way. But obviously there's some confusion of clarification regarding that. So I'd like to ask David Root to review this, review chapter 32, review chapter 38, and make sure that we are doing what the consumer thinks that we are doing. I don't think there's a change here at all. I think that there's a clarification within these zones.
Is that in the form of a motion?
I can make it in the form of a motion. I'd like to make a motion that David Root review this scenario and see if we have a conflict of practice versus what we're actually doing. And then bring it to us. But more importantly, I think that this should be fixed. Yes, a house needs to be in residential zone. You have to have 80-foot wide lot in that zone. In traditional residential, I think it's 100 feet. And in some others, it's a different setup of distance. So we're not affecting where the house is. We're not affecting where the house, how close it is to the next door neighbor. What we are affecting is the potential view, and what we are protecting is the consumer who goes and he buys a lot, and he thinks he's going to be able to put his house with everybody else's house and then finds that he can't. So,
Got discussion?
yes.
So, when I first read over this, I was curious what contained in a flag lot. And there's one thing that kept coming up, and it's flagpole. If you look at 28 of 87, B 1 and 2, it's mentioned there.
Under flag lots?
Yes.
Yes.
And it seems like the drawing you had up there, it's missing the flagpole.
So it's not a flag lot, but being interpreted as a flag lot, is that what
Correct.
you're saying?
And I think that goes right along with what the Board of Zoning Appeals was stating, that it needs some clarification in the wording. So what I'm seeing is there's got to be a clear understanding of what is a flag lot. It's calling out what a flagpole is. There's an example there. These other lots to me look as if they are the flag without the pole. So that's something that we need to look into and figure out, how can we better define that? Does it need to be defined better, or is it just a misinterpretation?
Well, under flag lot, item 3 that's up there does say that the front setback is measured from where the lot meets the minimum district width. And under residential, that would be 80 feet. But I'm assuming that that's under B, one of the items under B, which is under flag lots. When you go to setbacks, it says that it shall, under B, it says where the property abuts the street right-of-way, the setback shall be measured from the right-of-way line. And to me, that's setbacks. But however we've written it, there's obvious a lack of understanding. I don't know that it's completely clear. And I'm afraid that consumers are purchasing property under a certain belief system and then finding that they can't actually build what they thought they could build and where they thought they could build it based on properties to either side of them. And I think that also would apply to pie lots, that once the lot, thin or not, it doesn't matter because it still has a width of 80 feet or 100 feet or whatever that width is, in the build zone, which is that build zone or buildable area is unchanged regardless of the configuration of the lot.
And it still has setbacks from.
Still has side
adjacent
setbacks,
property.
rear setbacks,
Yeah.
et cetera, that have to be adhered to. We're just saying, and the front back still has to be adhered to. It's just where does the front setback measured from? So that was my proposal.
Mr. Chair, I think it's understood what we're asking for, but just to make sure, we would expect that Mr. Root would consult with Mr. Kohler on this.
And yes, and make sure that
I just
we're,
want to make sure of that.
yeah, we definitely want to make sure that there's a communication to make sure.
How would you interpret this, and then see if that's how it's written?
So does the building line start at 80 feet width?
in a residential subdivision, the buildable area has an 80-foot width under
So the
residential
building
width
line-
requirement.
The building line starts when the lot
Lot
is
is
80 feet wide.
So if you had a square lot
Would
that's
you-
80 feet at the road, the setback is 25 feet off of the right-of-way, and that it would be your build area because the lot's still 80 feet wide.
So would you not want to interpret it or write it such that the setback is either 25 feet from the right-of-way or where this building line can be established?
Well, the building line would be a building code situation. It is established based on the fact that it's already within the zone. That's not necessarily the setback. Well, let me retract that. So,
I mean, you can't build anything
no,
past the 80 feet
the
width.
setback, no, the setback still, yes, you're correct. So it would be at,
25 feet
it'd be at the 25 feet or
or
the
to
80
the
foot,
building line.
whichever, yes. Yeah,
Which
yeah,
is the
yeah.
way he's interpreting it. Is that not correct? Is that the way you're interpreting it?
No, we have a minimum lot width and then the setback.
I think his question was,
Oh.
don't you interpret it like the second from the left? You're good once you hit 80 feet, if that's the minimum lot width.
No, we're showing a setback from that 80-foot.
Right, yeah, that's
Why
what
would you take
that's where you start the
25 more
measurement.
feet, I think? Is that what you're asking? Why would
Yes.
you take 25 more feet? Why do you do that? Why can't you build up to the 80-foot width? That's the building line. James, do you mind filling us in on the question at hand? You know, why is it that you go the full 80 feet and then add 25 from there?
If I could jump in, he's not making it up, so the law that's written is the front setback shall be measured from where the lot meets the district minimum width requirements. So that's the current code provision. I think that's what Mr. Coley is trying to follow. This
But is
not-
that-
I don't believe this is necessarily a thing that, hey, our ordinance is not clear. Flag lots typically, they have a flag pole, and this is, the way it's written is to give folks an opportunity to build flag lots. A lot of times they would be, perhaps just completely rendered null because they don't have that minimum width requirement at the road. But because some subdivisions, they're gonna build in such a way, put houses this way, send driveways down and put lots in the back, okay, we'll do minimum, we'll do flag lots, because that's what flag lot is, historically, term of art. And once you get to the minimum width, just like anybody else, usually it's on the road, and your example's up here, then the setback starts. I mean, that's just the way it's written. I think it's clear.
But-
If y'all want to change that, I think what you're talking about is changing the language as opposed to
I don't
making
think,
this
so,
clear.
so let me ask you, so you're saying that that 1B also applies to item 2. So setbacks is still dealing with only flag lots?
No.
Because setbacks, it says it shall be measured from the right-of-way under setbacks.
In those situations, if you've got a minimum width on the right of way, yes, but if you've got a flag lot, obviously James is not gonna allow someone to put, a
So,
house 30 feet.
so a
Sorry.
74-foot wide lot, is that a flag lot?
That's the question.
Right, and that's where I'm asking for
Typically, it
clarification.
is not. That's why I'm saying I think you're looking for a vision to this to account for pie lots or trapezoids or whatever, so you can start your setback closer to the road or however. That's what you're looking for. I don't think the ordinance, I think it needs to be rewritten if you're looking to do that, and I'm glad to do that.
And yeah, and that's what I'm hoping that I proposed here, is that this be reviewed and looked at, that if it's not a traditional flag lot, our topography in our area doesn't allow for square grid anything. We're working off of ditches and gullies and everything else when surveys are being created, and there may be the occasion where I wouldn't call it a flag lot, but as in that example, there is less than 80 foot wide at the road.
Is there a point where you're gonna, if it's a piece of pie or pizza or whatever, where you're gonna say, nah, that doesn't work, you can't do it from the road because it's only a foot on the road? Where does it start?
So-
I can write it however, and we can send
So
it out.
you do have to have, based on a flag lot, at least 30 feet. as a minimum, so I wouldn't say that that would be out of the question to do that, although a driveway is only 12 feet, and many of our subdivisions in the cul-de-sacs are, maybe they are 30 feet, so maybe that's the number, but I don't think it should be 65 or 70 or 74 or 78 or 79. We're controlling the build area by what the build area is defined as.
I think the setback ends, it should, either 25 feet from the road or the right-of-way, or at the 80-foot lot width line, the build line.
It would just have to be rewritten. It could do that, but it just doesn't, it's not written that way right now. In the code that was, whenever this ordinance was passed, it had the measurement area from when it meets the minimum. That's when you start a setback.
Right now,
I
I view it
understand what
as
you're
a
saying.
property taken.
I'm sorry?
Right now, I view it as a property taken.
I think a lot of folks would view any setback as a property taken.
Unjustified
The
property
Supreme Court has
taken.
said, no, it's okay to have setbacks that are good for the general health and welfare of the public. So you have some open space, you have safety concerns. There's, I don't know, I went through it, it's been many years, but there's a litany of lists why the Supreme Court of the state and the United States has said setbacks are A-okay.
Can I say something?
Yes.
So on this flagpole 3893, number 4, and this might answer the question of why do you have to go down so far on your pie shape to get to 80, the flagpole portion of the lot shall not be used to calculate area, width, or setbacks of the lot.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, it has to
I
be
mean,
rewritten.
it's written there, why? Secondly, this chart, it's from, I have it in my notes from December 2023 about the percentage of acreage that we have in each district. So in the land residential district, there's 1.2% of our acres, is only 1.2% is how I should say it. And then in the residential district, we have 0.6. So you're talking about 1.8% of all of our acreage that might have an issue with the setback, and actually probably be less than 1.8%. I think it's just a really tiny number, I don't know. And then with regard to unusual circumstances or off lots, that is what the BZA is for. I went back to every hearing in 2024 and in 2023 and 2 months in 2022. And I wrote down a little chart. So there were variance requests for front setbacks, side setbacks, rear setbacks, and 100% of them were approved. 100% unanimously approved. So the BZA is not out to get anyone. The BZA is not against hearing everybody's grievance about their particular situation. It's very open to that. The BZA is our taxpayers' way of getting due process. So I just think for exceptions, I feel like this whole conversation, this setback change is for an exception or very few lots in the county, and I think if anybody has a lot like this, go to the BZA. But to have a whole ordinance change for a very small number, I'm not for it.
So you do say 1%, 1.5%. 1.5% includes lakes, includes lots of space within a county. When you say it includes multiple lots that exist in subdivisions, it could be a big number if it's your ownership of your lot, and to have to go in front of people to hat in hand and say, I would like to do what I thought I was able to do, but I'm not, because there was a clarity issue.
Based on this track record, you probably get a
Absolutely,
yes.
you are.
Oh, yeah.
But according to the state of South Carolina, if there are issues like this, we're supposed to address them.
Do we not have a buyer beware situation in South Carolina?
We're not dealing with the buyer beware, we're dealing with an issue that has come up on multiple occasions. And while it did get 100% approval, it still should come before this board. Now, whatever we do with it is up to whatever we do with it. But it doesn't mean that it's a nebulous issue.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Where's mine?
So, as Ms. Spicer was stating, it's 100% approval. I recall a female having to move her mobile home twice because she could not get the approval from the BZA for setback from the road.
I remember something about the road, yeah.
So I don't think we accounted for the totality of everything coming from the BZA. And that is one example I do recall. I think Mr. Root just alleged that he recalled it too. So our job is to protect the people, whether it's 1% or 100%. If something's wrong, it's wrong. But also have a question, yes, the BZA is there for variance. But I also recall that this planning commission here is here for interpretation. That if a person does not agree with the interpretation of the planning director, they should bring it forth to us. So I'm just curious.
They can appeal it.
Right, they can appeal it here. I'm just curious of why we've not heard of an appeal.
I think the ordinance, while there is confusion, I think that based on what I'm hearing from Mr. Root, that this is written as is believed of the planning commission or the planning department. This is the way the ordinance is written. That's why I'm suggesting that it be reviewed and modified.
Yeah, I'm just glad you was doing your due diligence, seeing what was going on at the BZA to bring this up, but it's where I'm going. So, it surprised me, because if I had read this and I had a flag, or not a flag lot, but a odd-shaped lot that was 77 feet at the right-of-way, and I was told, well, you gotta go 80 feet and 25 feet, y'all would have seen me.
So, is there any more discussion? So the motion is to send this to Mr. Root and to James and to have a conversation so that if we need to make adjustments to the wording, that we can make those adjustments so that, yes, the buildable area is still at the 80-foot line, but that the setback would otherwise start at the right-of-way, but the build area still has to be at 80 feet back, whatever that adjustment was that you had mentioned.
Get rid of the 25 feet beyond the 80 feet build line width. It establishes the build line.
Does any of that make sense?
I think it does. So we're not having a true setback. The setback is the minimum area, right?
There would be
It's 25 feet
25
or
whatever the,
further to the build line at the 80-foot width.
Just repeating what you said.
yeah, whatever the district minimum is still needs to be met.
Right.
Whatever the district zoning minimum is still needs to be,
But no setback from there. It's just from where it's
but
met.
no additional beyond the 25 foot unless it's a true flag lot, which we would then potentially also be defining, something with a flag pole, but not something that's a lot that just happens to be 78 feet wide rather than 80 feet wide.
I think a lot of this this is a planning issue. I mean, I'll draft it certainly and work with James. He's gonna have more familiarity with what he deals with and what other jurisdictions deal with, so we'll probably end up with some, like a menu option or something, I don't know, to figure out what works. I mean, it's just, like you say, this isn't a city, it's not laid out in grids, it's difficult to do. Certainly is done other places. So we're just gonna have to see what places have worked, because it's a little, I mean, it's generally flag poles are treated, our flag lots are treated this way because they have a flag pole, and so it's not a legal, what I'm trying to say is it's not a legal issue so much as it is a planning issue and a planning.
Just in looking on GIS mapping, there's a lot of lots out there that I'm going, man, that guy's gonna get stung when he goes to pull his build permit because they're gonna push him into a ditch in order to build, which now increases the expense because you can't put footings in a ditch. So now he's in front of the BZA, and I don't think we should be doing that if we don't have to.
Mr. Chair, could you call a question, please?
All right, so all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand and signify by saying aye. All those opposed?
Motion carries.
If I could, just to call the question requires a supermajority vote.
I'm sorry?
So to call a question requires a supermajority vote. It's a motion. One of y'all, if you want to call a question, say, hey, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call the question. You take a vote for it. If you get 4 people, yeah, I mean, we have up here.
Did we not end
4 people?
discussion?
Yeah, we had a discussion.
Make a
We ended
formal
discussion.
motion on that.
We ended
Yeah,
discussion.
that's what I'm saying. That's why I put it out there after it was already done. I thought y'all were done,
My
but
purpose is
I'm.
not to make a formal motion
Yeah,
on
yeah.
that. I was just hoping that
Say you're ready to.
that you would decide
Yep.
to call the question.
I
Yes.
just want to be clear that we
So I
can't
think we're fine.
cut off
I'd like
other
to-
people by
I'd like
saying
to
call
move
the
that we
question.
adjourn.
Yes, I will second that. All those in favor? Aye.